The first tip is to throw away the notebook. Now, I know I am supposed to be discussing how to make great MCAT notes, but the best kind of notes are not written in a notebook. Allow me to explain why. The primary reason that taking notes in a notebook will not cut it is that there is no effective way to review notebook notes. Effective review entails testing yourself to ensure that you know every single concept you need to know. A notebook is not built for this, as the best you can do is simply skim over your notes. This may work for a college midterm, but it will not work for the MCAT. Why? Think about this. The MCAT covers all the information from all your pre-med classes on a single exam. Biology, biochemistry, chemistry 1, chemistry 2, organic chemistry 1, organic chemistry 2, physics 1, physics 2, physiology, genetics, psychology, and sociology are all fair game. That's over 10 of the hardest classes available to college students, all tested on one exam. To ensure that you have all the details perfectly memorized before you waltz into the testing center to take the MCAT, you need to effectively review every MCAT concept, and notebook notes will not cut it. Seriously, the biggest mistake that I see students make is taking notes in a notebook. It is completely ineffective. Tip number 2 is to use flashcards. After our discussion regarding the drawback of notebook notes, the benefit of flashcards should be clear. They allow you to test yourself on the concepts that you studied and ensure that you know everything you need to know for the MCAT. Flashcards are also better than notebooks because they more easily allow for on-the-go studying. You can whip them out on a bus, on a train, or even while sitting on the john. Personally, I enjoy studying my flashcards while on a long walk outside, which gives me the added benefit of endorphins, sunshine, and fresh air. Now, how many of you guys have used flashcards before? All right, looks like Kaylin has, Christy has. All right, a lot of you guys have used flashcards before. And I would guess that most of you have used flashcards for something such as a vocabulary test. And for this reason, you likely think of flashcards as having a term on the front and a definition on the back. A very common way to write flashcards. This leads me to tip number 3, which is to write questions and answers, not terms and definitions. Questions cause you to think deeply about MCAT study material, while regurgitating terms will not have the same effect. You see, the MCAT is not a vocabulary test. It requires you to critically think about science content and use that content to solve challenging problems. Having a question on the front of the flashcard will push you to think critically about the content as you solve the problems that you write for yourself. Tip number 4 is to mimic the testing style of the AAMC. While in college, I used flashcards to get an A in every single one of my pre-med classes. What was the secret to my success? Flashcards. And when I wrote flashcards, I had a single essential goal in mind. My objective was to write questions that I expected to show up on the test. For instance, if the teacher emphasized a certain point, I would make sure to write a question that would force me to reproduce that key point from memory. If the teacher was known to connect new topics with previously learned concepts, I would try to write questions that forced me to relate two similar yet different concepts to one another. By the time the midterm rolled around, my note card stack was essentially my version of the upcoming exam, full of questions that I predicted I would need to be able to answer. At which point, I'd carefully study every flashcard until I got them all right. Then, I'd enter the testing center with confidence, knowing that I had already passed my version of the exam, my note card stack. This is how you will feel on MCAT test day if you've written high-quality flashcards and mastered all of them. But the most challenging part about the MCAT is knowing how the MCAT is going to test you. It's not a question of what. The Khan Academy videos and content review books embedded in our free MCAT prep course cover all of that. It's a question of style. For instance, you may know that operant conditioning is tested on the MCAT, but how will the AAMC test you on that concept? What question might they ask you about it? One important reason why I have students take an AAMC mini exam at the end of each content module is that it gives you an opportunity to remind yourself what the AAMC is looking for. It helps you gain an understanding for the AAMC's style while you are learning the content. This allows you to develop what I call an AAMC mindset. When you study with an AAMC mindset, you focus on learning the material in the way the AAMC requires you to learn it. And most importantly, when you make flashcards with an AAMC mindset, you write questions that force you to think about the material in a way that will lead to more points on test day. When I studied for the MCAT, I made thousands of flashcards as pictured here. And yes, those are all separate boxes and bags of note cards, all for the MCAT. Now, because I personally know how much time it takes to make all these note cards yourself, I'd highly recommend using my Quizlet flashcard collection, which includes over 5,000 flashcards that cover every single concept taught by Khan Academy and the content review books. Having done the AAMC practice questions countless times, I have a very strong AAMC mindset, which I used to write these flashcards in a way that would ensure my students would know the material in the way the AAMC is going to test them on it. Using these pre-made flashcards will not only help you save time for making thousands of note cards by yourself, but it will also allow you to learn the content in the way you need to know it to succeed on test day. Best of all, each flashcard is embedded within its corresponding lesson of the free e-course, and our flashcard collection can be studied on the go using the Quizlet app. The full collection of over 5,000 flashcards comes with my Create Your Own Study Plan course as part of the Advanced Pro Plan for just $99. My pre-made flashcards also act as a model for the type of flashcards that you should be writing, and the next few note card writing tips will show you that. Tip number 5 is to write flashcards that focus on recognition and not recall. One nice thing about the MCAT is that it is not a fill-in-the-blank type of exam. Every question is A through D multiple choice question. For this reason, you don't need to focus on recalling the names of theories or abstract concepts. As an example, you shouldn't write a flashcard that asks, what is it called when graded potentials are added together? I call these flashcards guess the term questions, and they are very low yield in preparing you to conquer the MCAT. Instead of focusing on memorizing the names of concepts, you need to focus your attention on understanding and being able to describe what those concepts are. To do this, you should write flashcards that name a concept on the front and ask you to describe it in some way. For instance, in this flashcard from our collection, notice that the key terms are specified on the front, preventing you from needing to recall them from memory. The answer on the back involves describing the key terms, reinforcing your understanding of what those terms are, how they work, and why they are important. This is the stuff the AAMC cares about, and it is the stuff you will be tested on come test day. Tip number 6 is to write flashcards that relate similar concepts to one another. One of the most challenging aspects of the MCAT is that you often end up stuck between two answer choices that seem very similar to one another. This is especially common on the behavioral science section. For this reason, you should write questions that ask you to compare two concepts that relate to one another. For instance, this flashcard compares two similar terms side by side. Being able to answer this question correctly will ensure that if you end up stuck between these two concepts as answer choices, you'll be able to easily answer the question correctly. Another way to write these kinds of flashcards is to write them as multiple choice questions with related terms as answer choice options, as seen here. The added benefit of writing these types of flashcards is that they mimic the same questioning style that the AAMC uses. They do take more time to write, but we've made sure to include a healthy dose of these kinds of flashcards as part of our Quizlet flashcard collection. Tip number 7 is to push yourself to deeply engage with the material. While the MCAT does require you to memorize all the content, more importantly, it requires you to understand it on a deeper level than perhaps may have been required in your pre-med classes. For instance, in your pre-med classes, how many of you were required to memorize the amino acids? All right, looks like a lot of you were required to memorize these amino acids. And in your pre-med classes, I am guessing that you had to memorize things such as which amino acids are basic versus acidic, and other similar facts. In and of itself, because there are 20 amino acids, this task alone can be daunting. However, the MCAT takes it to a whole new level. On the MCAT, you need to not only know which amino acids are basic versus acidic, but you also need to know why they are. You should be able to describe in your own words what it is about the structure of the amino acid that makes it behave as basic versus acidic. The MCAT really wants you to know why and to be able to explain why in simple, understandable terms. And this makes perfect sense because we don't want doctors who simply memorize and regurgitate treatment plans. We want doctors who understand why they are recommending a certain treatment, why it is better than an alternative option, and how to explain all of it to a patient in simple, easy to understand terms. The MCAT's job is to determine who will make for this type of doctor, and the MCAT does its job well. To write flashcards that will help you develop this kind of deep understanding, focus on writing flashcards that push you to think beyond what is stated in the video or written in the book. Ask why, and then write a question that pushes you to explain it. And this doesn't just entail writing questions that start with why. For instance, this question pushes you to think deeply without actually asking why. Your goal is to focus on writing questions that push you to think past the surface level understanding of something. Tip number 8 is to push yourself to apply the material. Not only does this help you better understand what you are learning, but it also helps you remember it better. For instance, this flashcard pushes you to apply the concept to real-life examples. It helps you get beyond the abstract definition and see the concrete reality of how this concept might apply in the real world. These kinds of flashcards are super helpful on the MCAT because the MCAT wants to see if you truly understand the intricacies of a concept and how they actually apply. That's why the AAMC includes passages on all 4 sections of the MCAT. You need to be able to read a passage, recognize the concepts being exemplified in that passage, and then answer deep questions regarding how those concepts were applied in the passage. Questions that push you to think of an example will help with this. In particular, if you can apply what you are learning to something from your personal life, you will be very unlikely to forget it, as in a flashcard such as this one. While you are making flashcards, you need to put your thinking hat on. Get creative. The more creative you get, the better your memory will be. Tip number 9 is to only test yourself on one fact at a time. For instance, if you have a flashcard that asks you to describe all 5 stages of mitosis on a single flashcard, you will likely describe some of the stages correctly, but not others. Because you got some of them correct, you may get lazy and simply decide to pretend that you got the whole thing right and not review it again. Not good. Additionally, when you see a flashcard that has a really long answer on the back, your motivation to answer it fully decreases significantly. No one wants to get stuck on a single flashcard for 10 minutes. When you write flashcards that only test you on one fact at a time, you can avoid these issues. For instance, you might ask a question such as, what happens to the nuclear envelope during prophase? This is a much better question than before because the question only has one right answer, it only asks about a single fact, and it only takes a few seconds to answer. This way, you will hold yourself accountable for that single fact, and you'll be more motivated to answer the question since it is short and sweet. Now, let's be 100% clear. Asking what happens to the nuclear envelope during prophase is a good question, but asking what happens during prophase is not. For one, it is not specific, resulting in countless ways to answer the question, since many things happen during prophase. For another, questions such as this will likely have a long list of facts on the back, resulting in the same issues we saw with the original question. The key takeaway here is to make your questions specific to a single fact that is being tested. Tip number 10 is to write your flashcards in your own words. If you follow my previous 9 tips, this shouldn't be very hard, since my way of writing flashcards almost forces you to use your own language instead of copying text from a book. That being said, Copying exactly what is said in a video or exactly what is written in a book is so tempting because it is so much easier than recrafting what was taught into your own words. But simply regurgitating what someone else said is a waste of your time because it will not result in deep learning. Being able to put a concept into your own words is proof that you actually understand that thing. By describing something using your own day-to-day lingo, you are translating what was said or written into something you actually understand. This is crucial. Tip number 11 is to make flashcards at the right time. You may not know this, but there is a right time and a wrong time to make a flashcard. Most students make a flashcard every time they see a bolded term. This is not a good idea. Just because something is bolded does not mean it is important. It may mean that it is important to the writer of that book, but it does not mean it is important on the MCAT. By that same token, just because someone in a video writes something down on a virtual whiteboard doesn't make it note card worthy. Instead of searching for bolded terms, vocabulary words, or emphasized concepts, I would instead suggest searching for facts. I want to illustrate this by taking a look together at this short selection from a Khan Academy article about filtration in the kidney. Let's read it together. And I will pause every time I discover a fact so that I can show you how I would write a note card to capture that fact. Blood that is about to be filtered enters a glomerulus, which is a tuft of blood capillaries, the smallest of blood vessels. Okay, even just this first sentence contains several facts. Let's pause and capture them by writing some flashcards. The first fact I see is that blood is filtered by the glomerulus. How can I make a flashcard to test myself on this singular fact? Perhaps I could make an AAMC-style multiple choice question that asks, which of the following is responsible for filtering the fluid that enters the kidney? This would be good, but I think I can do better. What if I wrote an application question, such as, what would happen if the kidney did not have a glomerulus? See how this question would cause me to think deeply by forcing me to relate this one sentence to several other previously learned concepts? Another fact hidden in this sentence is that capillaries are the smallest type of blood vessel. What flashcard could we write to capture that idea? Perhaps we could write a question that forces us to make a comparison, such as, compare the size of a capillary to an artery. Now, the final fact that I see in this sentence is that the glomerulus is an example of a capillary. For this reason, I might write a flashcard such as, true or false, the glomerulus is an example of an artery. This question pushes me to think and only requires me to remember a single fact at a time. Okay, with this next sentence, I want you guys to put your thinking caps on and try to write your own question that captures the fact that it teaches. It says, the glomerulus is nestled inside a cup-like sac located at the end of each nephron, called a glomerular capsule. The fact I find hidden in this sentence is that the glomerulus is located within the glomerular capsule. Go ahead and take a couple minutes to think of a question that captures this fact. Then go ahead and type your question into the chat so that I can provide some constructive feedback. All right, let's jump in and I'm going to take a look at some of your questions and give you some constructive feedback. So Grace writes, where can the glomerulus be located in the kidney? Now, this is great. You know, Grace is capturing the fact, right? But the one issue that I see with this question is that it's a guess the term question, right? She's asking us to regurgitate a term, and the AAMC is never going to ask us to regurgitate a term, right? So definitely, Grace, you get points for capturing one single fact, but to bring it to the next level, instead of asking us to regurgitate a term, let's ask us to do some sort of thinking that causes us to interact with both terms, right? The glomerulus and the glomerular capsule. And let's see, Andrew asks, what is the function of the glomerular capsule? Yeah, that's a great question because it states the term on the front and it asks us to do some describing, right? You want to get yourself talking, right? When I walk around with flashcards, I probably look like probably someone who's insane because I'm talking to myself, right? If I'm in public, probably not out loud, but I might be mouthing it out, or I might, I'm doing some sort of intense thinking and talking, right? And questions that ask you to describe something, fantastic. So great job there, Andrew. That's really great. And let's see. Delia says, true or false, the glomerular capsule is found at the beginning of each nephron? Yeah, I think that's fine. It only causes us to basically say yes or no, which is fine for some facts. Some facts are very basic and it's only a yes or no answer. But if we can push ourselves, like I said with that previous flashcard, to be describing something, bonus points there. Awesome, guys. Thanks for giving this a shot. Writing good flashcards takes time and practice, and I'm sure you guys will get there as you ponder over these tips that I'm giving you here today. You're going to get better over time. Now, personally, I'm inclined to write a question that pushes me to compare the two similar sounding terms mentioned here. For instance, we could ask, how does the glomerulus relate to the glomerular capsule? See how that is much more involved than simply asking yourself to regurgitate a term? It pushes you to think deeply and understand the intricate differences between these similar terms. The MCAT will reward you greatly for making such high-level flashcards. Now, at this point, I am sure you're thinking to yourself, Andrew, you made 4 flashcards for just 2 sentences worth of material. Ain't nobody got time for that. And you are exactly right. This is a time-consuming process, which is a major reason why I went to the trouble of making my collection of over 5,000 flashcards for my busy students. You will likely not have the time to make your own flashcards for every single fact taught by Khan Academy, as well as several content review books like we did when we made our flashcards. This is the major reason why the majority of our students will at the very least upgrade to the Advanced Pro plan for just $99 in order to gain access to our complete flashcard collection. Now, even though our flashcard collection covers all the MCAT content you need to know, it is still beneficial to make your own flashcards for the content modules that you struggle with the most. And in my Create Your Own Study Plan course, I will help you decide which modules are worth your time to write your own flashcards for. For instance, if you end up scoring just 1 point below your goal score in the behavioral sciences section of the diagnostic exam, I may recommend for you to skip the videos and skip the content review books and just test yourself on the Quizlet flashcards for the lessons in that module, allowing you to work through this module very quickly. On the other hand, if you end up scoring 6 points below your goal score in the chemistry physics section of your diagnostic exam, I may recommend that you watch all the videos from the video playlists while making your own flashcards, read the Kaplan book reading assignments without making your own flashcards, and study all of our pre-made Quizlet flashcards. You see, to truly learn a challenging subject, you need to engage deeply with it. And the best way to engage with it is by making flashcards. I highly, highly recommend that you make your own flashcards for the content modules that I recommend for you specifically in my Create Your Own Study Plan course. And don't get lazy to the point that you are only making flashcards for 1 out of every 10 facts mentioned. You need to make flashcards for every single fact. Everything is fair game on the MCAT, and students who memorize every piece of content to the T are the students who I see succeed on this test. It is a very hard exam, so please do not get lazy. But even if you make your own note cards for certain content modules, I'd still recommend using my pre-made Quizlet flashcards as a means of double-checking your understanding, because sometimes we think we understand something, but we really don't. Going through my flashcards will allow you to confirm for yourself that you learned everything that I think you should know in the way you should know it for the MCAT. Tip number 12 is to review your flashcards regularly. There are many ways to review your flashcards, but in order to succeed on the MCAT, you will need an advanced review system that involves reviewing each flashcard several times in a way that every concept will be 100% memorized and available in your brain on test day. In regards to these advanced review systems, I want to briefly mention 2 main types. The first type of review system I want to mention is what I call a memory prevention system. Now, how many of you guys have heard of Anki? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat. Anki is a very popular example of a memory prevention system. It will prompt you to review a flashcard right before its algorithm believes you are going to forget it. This typically involves gradually increasing the time between review sessions. The benefit to this system is that you don't need to worry about when to review your flashcards, since the algorithm will do that for you. However, there are a few major drawbacks to this type of review system. The first main drawback is that this type of review system is very time-consuming. Many students who do all the cards that Anki tells them to review each day eventually end up spending half of their study time each day reviewing flashcards. This is because the MCAT covers so much content, and to keep it all in your brain at all times requires a substantial amount of your time. This is not good for an already busy pre-med student like yourself. I've seen many students get so overwhelmed by the number of Anki cards they have to review each day that they give up reviewing their flashcards completely. Another reason that this system falls short is that it is disorganized in terms of which flashcards it requests that you review each day. For instance, it might present you with a random flashcard from lesson 12 of the Biology 1 module, and then immediately after present you with a random flashcard from lesson 5 of the Physics 2 module. This hurts your brain's ability to keep all the information neatly organized. I highly recommend studying and reviewing concepts in the same order every time, as a means to strengthen the organization of the information in your brain. You want your brain to act like an organized filing cabinet, and not an office with papers scattered all around the room. The final and most troubling issue I have with this type of review system is that its algorithm is imperfect. For instance, can Anki know the exact date and time that a certain concept is going to leave your brain? No. And what if it just so happens that the day after test day, Anki was going to remind you to study 300 flashcards that you had actually forgotten one day prior? If this was the case, your brain was not ready for test day. To me, that is a scary thought. You want every concept memorized as close to 100% on test day as possible. The second type of review system that I want to mention is what I call a test day-centric system. With this type of system, you review concepts several times immediately after you learn them to enhance your initial understanding of them. And then you ramp up your review of the concepts just before your test day. This is the same review system I used in college, and I believe it was largely responsible for helping me maintain a 4.0 GPA as a pre-med. The reason this is a better system is that it results in less of your daily study time getting sucked into flashcard review. It allows you to review each flashcard within its proper context and order, and it will result in every concept being perfectly memorized on test day. You see, you do not need every concept memorized on every single day that you are studying for the MCAT. You only need those concepts to be initially understood and then available in your brain when it truly matters, on test day. The test day-centric review system is fully integrated into our free MCAT prep course. For instance, in each lesson, you will review the current lesson's flashcards as well as the previous lesson's flashcards. For instance, you'd review the flashcards from lesson 1 at the end of lesson 1 and at the end of lesson 2. Then, after completing lessons 1 through 12 of the content module, in lesson 13, you will review all the flashcards from lessons 1 through 12 again. And once you've completed all 10 content modules, you'll start MCAT Bootcamp. During MCAT Bootcamp, in addition to taking full-length exams, you will also review every single flashcard from the 10 content modules again. Remember, MCAT Bootcamp takes place during your final month of MCAT studying leading up to your test date. You will take full-length exams every 4 days, resulting in 7 total. In addition to the 4 from the AAMC, I will provide you with the links to several free full-length exams as part of the MCAT Bootcamp module. Since you'll also need to spend a day reviewing each full-length, 14 of the 30 days of MCAT Bootcamp will be devoted to taking and reviewing practice exams. The other 16 days will be devoted to a day of rest before test day and 15 days of flashcard review. The first 12 of those days will be spent reviewing every flashcard while marking the ones you get wrong. You'll then review the marked flashcards one last time during the final 3 days of studying during MCAT bootcamp. This way, the most challenging concepts for you will be reviewed just before your test, solidifying them for when it matters most. Following our advanced review system, you will have reviewed each flashcard at least 4 times. Let's use Lesson 1 of the Biochemistry 1 module as an example. You will review its flashcards at the end of Lesson 1, at the end of Lesson 2, and again during Lesson 13. Then, once you've completed all 10 content modules, you will review those flashcards again during MCAT bootcamp, and again during the final few days of MCAT bootcamp if needed. Carefully following this advanced review system, which is built into our free MCAT prep course, will result in every concept being 100% memorized in your brain on test day. As a final bonus tip, I want to encourage you to review each flashcard set to perfection during each review session. How many of you have heard the phrase, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect? Okay, looks like some of you haven't heard of it, some of you have, and this saying is actually heavily supported by neuroscience. When a brain pathway is activated, that pathway is strengthened, making it more likely to be activated again later. For this reason, if you practice a card wrong and then just wait until the next review session to try again, you are activating and strengthening the wrong brain pathway. You need to strengthen the correct brain pathway by answering each flashcard perfectly correct by the end of each study session. To do this, each time you study a flashcard set, you should mark the cards you get wrong and then study the marked ones again and again, only unmarking a flashcard once you answer it flawlessly. Quizlet makes it very easy to do this, as you can star note cards to mark them, and then study only those marked cards using the Study Starred option. In summary, you want every concept perfectly memorized and available in your brain on test day. And I truly believe that following these 12 tips will do that for you. All right, we've covered a lot of material so far today. And before we move on to the final 2 keys of MCAT success, I want to take a quick pause here and see how things are going. How many of you have found this intro session to be helpful so far? I would love it if you take a second here to type into the chat just 1 to 2 sentences regarding how you've liked the session so far. I will be sharing your comments with other students as a means to build awareness for this free intro session. Thank you so much for your comments, guys. I really love putting on these free events for you, and it's really been a lot of fun today. The second to last key to MCAT success that I want to discuss today is to prioritize the most high-yield concepts. While it is extremely important to learn all the content contained in our free e-course, not all MCAT concepts are created equal. For instance, the amino acids are tested all the time on the MCAT. NMR, on the other hand, is rarely tested at all. You should still learn both of these topics to the best of your ability, but you should give amino acids more of your study time and attention. Your focus should be on those topics that will maximize your score the most. To help my students with this, I've created memorization courses that will help you with the most commonly tested and most challenging to learn topics. For instance, my amino acid mastery course helps you master and memorize every essential piece of information that you need to know about the amino acids, one of the most highly tested topics on the MCAT. In this course, you will learn each amino acid's 1-letter abbreviation, 3-letter abbreviation, pKa, structure, and more, equipping you to handle any amino acid related question that the AAMC might throw at you. I'd highly recommend taking advantage of this high value course. In addition to memorizing the amino acids, many students struggle with memorizing all the equations needed to succeed on the MCAT. Although most prep books contain several hundred equations, you will not need to know all of these for the MCAT. Knowing which ones you must know by heart and which ones you should simply understand can be hard, which is why I crafted my 100 Most Essential Equations course. It not only helps you memorize the 100 equations that you must know for the MCAT, but it also provides you with a single-page equation sheet. I'd recommend printing this out and keeping it by you. Then, as you study, you should highlight the equations as you encounter them in the content modules. When an equation being taught in a content module is also on the equation sheet, you'll know to pay extra careful attention to mastering and memorizing it. One of the most often tested subjects on the MCAT is also one of students' greatest fears. The details of all the major metabolic pathways, such as glycolysis, Krebs cycle, the electron transport chain, and more, are all fair game on the MCAT. The AAMC will ask you very specific questions about these, so you must know the substrates, enzymes, and energy substrates for each of these pathways. In my Metabolic Pathways Mastery course, I break each of these pathways down into bite-sized memorizable chunks, allowing you to quickly master each pathway. Now, something you may not know about the MCAT is that you are not allowed to use a calculator. Yet, calculations such as the log of 9.3 to the -4th molar or 3.9 to the 3rd nanometers divided by 9.2 to the -9th kilometers are all completely fair game. If doing this math in your head makes you throw up in your mouth even just a little bit, I'd recommend taking advantage of my high-speed math mastery course. It will teach you how to do every type of math expected of you on the MCAT at exceptionally fast speeds. In 2015, the MCAT added a new section to the MCAT, the notorious behavioral science section. This section requires you to know both psychology and sociology terms inside and out. Like the other sections of the MCAT, this section focuses on applying concepts, but more so than the other sections, the behavioral science section wants you to understand how the definitions of similar terms differ from each other. While the behavioral science content modules of our free MCAT prep course are fully comprehensive for the behavioral science content tested on the MCAT, the behavioral science booster course takes your mastery of that content to a higher level through fun and interactive learning games that allow you to learn these definitions through and through. While these 5 memorization courses that I just described focus on a single topic or concept, my 10 most commonly missed concepts course breaks the mold, focusing on 10 different specific concepts that I've noticed are both well-tested and difficult for students to learn on their own. This course allows me to fill in the gaps for my students by walking them through the most essential information that you should know about the most essential concepts. Each of my memorization courses is extremely affordable, and when you purchase them in the Deluxe Pro Plan bundle, you'll get all of them at half price. So how do these memorization courses fit into the e-course? My recommendation is to utilize one at a time while studying the content modules. Any order is fine, and I'd actually recommend working on the one that you currently struggle with the most. For instance, perhaps you'll notice on the diagnostic exam that you will take during the Create Your Own Study Plan course that you really struggled to remember the amino acids. If this is the case, you should start working your way through the amino acid mastery course first, 1 lesson per day, just about 15 minutes per day. Once you've finished that memorization course, perhaps you'll realize that you are having the hardest time keeping all the equations straight. If so, you should start the 100 Most Essential Equations Mastery course, once again, doing 1 lesson per day. Eventually, by the time you finish all the content modules, you will have gone through each memorization course at least once. And then, during MCAT Bootcamp, I'd recommend reviewing each memorization course one last time, which is a breeze because each course has a summary Quizlet set that you can use for a quick review of everything you learned in that course. As you can see, the memorization courses fit right in with everything else you are doing and allow you to slowly master the most important concepts one step at a time. The final key to earning a top MCAT score is to hone your MCAT test-taking skills. And to discuss this last hugely important key, let's dive into our final power topic, the 5 fundamentals of mastering test-taking strategy.